Welcome in, everybody, to the GC Live Postgame Show. South Carolina coming off in what was a much-needed victory today against Vanderbilt. I know there's going to be people on here today saying, "Oh, it was Vandy. It's going to be." Hey, go ask Florida last year. Go ask Kentucky last year if any of that mattered. All right, because Vandy went in. They beat both those teams last year. So I say that because at the end of the day, you had to come out here and you had to get a win first and foremost. But on top of that, what South Carolina was able to do today, they were able to play what I felt like was their most complimentary game of the year. Certainly, when you look at all three phases, they could have been better in certain areas, no question about it. But you were able to get points on special teams, right? You get the block punt, return for a touchdown, Keenan Nelson. Offensively, you were able to do some good things. Still at times, right? A couple drops. I understand the weather plays a role with that. I'll get into talking about the weather from the weather doctor over here, Michael Scarnecchia. He knows a thing or two about playing in wet games. And then defensively, again, I don't care who they were playing today. What they did today is exactly what you needed them to do. And they played their best defensive game in a long time, not just today. In fact, and I put this out there, you have to go all the way back. You have to go all the way back to September 28th of 2019 against Kentucky to find the last time South Carolina shut out an SEC team through the first three quarters. So that's what just stood out to me. But as always, intern Joe's with us. Former Gamecock quarterback Michael Scarnecchia is with us as well today. Mike, I'm going to give you the floor first. What was just your instant reaction from what you saw today with South Carolina?
I mean, it was domination from all sides of the ball. Our offense was moving the ball both in the run game, the pass game, even considering I was like, with how it was consistently raining, I think, for most of the game, at least almost through four quarters. And so I thought our pass game was going to be slowed down a little bit, but realistically, outside of the first quarter, it was after those first couple drives, it was nonstop. Spencer was on, the receivers figured it out. And while we still have some protection issues for the most part, I think Spencer was able to make plays and our receivers helped him. And then the Mario Anderson continues to find his way in our offense. He's a tough runner. He's always going to get yards. And he finally had that breakaway run, which was an awesome run. I think Gamecock fans love to see it. Our defense, though, was fantastic in the run stop. After what happened with Jacksonville State, I was concerned at what's going to happen with our safeties and coverage and what's going to happen with our run stop. And they really showed up this week because if they played the way they played last week against a good Jacksonville State team, I was concerned that there could be an issue of an upset. But they came out ready to play. They made the tackles. And I also think with the rain played a huge factor, I think, with our defense because our defense is especially with our safeties being such downhill threats in the run game, the rain affected Vanderbilt's passing game. So we were able to really focus on, helping out the run with our safeties being involved. And then we also brought some new blitz packages, which I was excited to see. There was very few times Vanderbilt's QB was able to get comfortable back there. And so seeing new blitz packages, finding ways to just get back and put pressure on the QB and also stop the runs was very important in this game. And it also, let's highlight it, to continue our hopes of a bowl game, we needed this win. I think we needed a dominated win. If we came in here and barely won, Kentucky looks more difficult. But Kentucky's going to come out next week, beat up against a good Alabama team. We just came off a dominant win, so I think we have a good hopes. I think we have a good shot at going in, especially night game against Kentucky, and winning and continuing our bowl hopes because, our players, I think for the most part, have played really hard this year. Spencer deserves it. A lot of these seniors who have just put their all into this team, in this university, I think they deserve it. But we got to get better day by day, and I think today was a good start of finishing the season right.
Yeah, you mentioned Spencer Rattler. I want to pull up some stats for people to take a chance to look at because, look, it wasn't perfect today by any means. Again, there were some drop passes. We'll get into that a little bit more with Mike because Mike knows a lot when it comes to playing in conditions like this. Can you guys see the stats?
It's pulling up right now.
I just want to make sure it's visible on the screen. We've had some issues in the past before. So I bring this up because you look at what Spencer was able to do today. And if you weren't watching the game, right? If you weren't watching the game and you just tuned in and, and it doesn't look like the stats are showing. So I'm going to pull that screen down. So I apologize for that. But those stats today for Rattler, 28 of 36, 351 yards, 3 touchdowns. Again, if you weren't watching the game today and you just look at the box score, you would have been like, man, that's Spencer Rattler, right? Like the weather conditions, like thinking about that. So, Mike, I say that because first and foremost, as a former quarterback, obviously, even though you made it look easy during that Missouri game that we all talk about still back in 2018, the monsoon game, but what is your takeaway of what Spencer was able to do today? You see a stat line like that despite the circumstances with the weather out there.
Yeah, I mean, my one big concern was if it's going to continually rain, how is our pass game going to adjust to that? Are we going to focus on the run? But it didn't really seem like that. They looked like Spencer was able to get comfortable. And it's impressive because, there's times when you're playing, a lot of QBs are able to play in the rain, but there's also there's more mishaps. There's more slips of the ball in your hand when you're letting go of it. Sometimes you don't get a good grip if you're trying to get it out right because you don't get the laces. And so there's so many different factors that go in when you're playing in the rain that you have to consider as an offensive coordinator because not everything's going to be pitch perfect out there when the rain. And so to see what Spencer was doing was great. Now, early on, we saw also him getting adjusted to the rain. I think that's why we saw some missed throws, some low throws, but there's nothing to worry about. You're going to get adjusted to the rain, and he did that perfectly. He was putting some fire on the ball when he needed to. I think one thing I always say too, especially as QBs, they always, when you want your hands pruned, pruning helps. The consistent rain helps. The worst games for rain are when it rains before the game, the field's wet, the balls get wet, but it doesn't continue rain. Because when your hands pruned through the constant rain, you actually get better grip. So, it could have helped Spencer after those first couple of drives. Maybe his hand pruned up. But, no, I thought they did a great job. I thought they did a great job a lot of times with those short routes, getting the ball to our tight end on a lot of those flat routes after a play action. Our offensive coordinator, I think he's done a really good job this year with messing up the eyes of the defense by doing a lot of play action, going the other way, a lot of rollouts with Spencer, a lot of putting pressure. I saw there was a lot of 3-level concepts that he put on the corners against Vanderbilt where we have someone in the flat, someone running an out route at 10 yards, and then someone running vertical, and it puts so much pressure. He does a good job at pinning people on the defense into a bad position, and then having Spencer back there is fantastic. So, playing in the rain, I thought there would be more mistakes than there were. And for Spencer's interception, I want to get this out of the way. What they ran was a Sam pressure. So they brought their some people call it a nickel, depending on what package they are, or their Sam linebacker. So they rotated to a cover 3. I saw Spencer look to the left, and he saw the rotation, the blitz coming. So I thought he was going to stay left. I don't know if there was a miscommunication or if there was something that happened with him and Xavier. That was just an honest mistake. It was nothing to do with the rain, but. I just wanted to get that out of the way and let everyone know that, the rain, I don't know how much the rain affected that one more than it was just maybe a miscommunication on the receiver and QB part.
A couple funny things to say today. And it's funny because of how it played out and certainly because they won. Luke Doty had a first down reception. He also had a first down drop because Xavier Luedecke was able to catch that pass that hit off his hands. Big Red. And we've talked about this ad nauseum, but I'm going to continue just to remind folks, especially because we want to continue to get those positive vibes in when we can. When you're 4-6, you take anything you get. Big Red asked about Mario Anderson. Yes. Mario Anderson does have another year of eligibility. Yes. What we got, Joe?
We got Will on the phone. Will, go ahead.
Hey, guys. How you doing? My issues with this rumor going around the University of South Carolina campus that Spencer Rattler is an ugly guy. And I just want to get on the record that he's cute. I think he's a good-looking fella.
All right. We're going to drop that.
He is a good-looking fella, Mike. I'll tell you. He's winning us games. He's probably a great QB. Get that guy back there. We need him for another year.
You want him back on? I didn't know if this was a prank here.
Mike told me to hang up the call. Will, we always appreciate you calling in, man.
Hey, we'll take any compliment for Spencer. That guy's a great QB for us.
I didn't know. Will, and I don't know where you were going with that, so that's why we dropped it. So I apologize if you were going to go with, hey, you know what, he could play well too. So get mad at me. It's not intern Joe. That was all me. I do want to go back to this. because Butch just paid us $20. So thank you, Butch. When you throw your comment goes up instantly, unless it's anything too crazy. I don't want to get yelled at from the boss man. But Butch says, Mike and Joe, Kentucky has no chance next Saturday, boys. Darude's going to be in the house. Night game, sandstorm, tailgating all day, wrap. And then he also adds, probably feeling this moonshine a little bit. And mix in a water, Butch. It's going to be a long night, especially since this game was a noon game. Joe's all smiles. Joe, you let me know what we got.
Yeah.
All right. Who we got?
We got Zach on the line. Zach, go ahead.
Hey guys, how's it going? I just want to say that this was probably the most complete game that we've played all season.
Yeah.
And that's good that we had this game at the time we needed it. I don't care if it was against Vandy. This is probably what you should have done. You should have done this against last week against Jack State. But it doesn't matter because you weren't doing this throughout the season. So it's good that you had a complete game. It gives this team a little confidence, and it shows them, like people were saying, on his on-field post game, what can happen when this team plays a whole game together, and hopefully that gives them confidence going down the stretch. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that. I'm glad you brought that up because we talked about this last week, Mike, that USC needed to find a way to be able to force some turnovers, right? Defensively, before last week's game, you have to go all the way back until the second quarter of the Tennessee game. That was all the way back on September 30th. Mm-hmm. So I bring that up because outside of a couple of kneel downs at the end of the game after O.D. Fortune's interception, and then if you want to include Stone Blanton's pick 6 in this stat that I'm going to throw out there, all those turnovers except for that last one that led to kneel downs, they all led to points. So I bring that up because that was, for the first time I felt like in a while, we started to see some type of complementary football with USC in terms of just this season. I mean, I'm not going to really look at the Furman game, but today against an SEC opponent, it wasn't just offense. It wasn't just defense. It was special teams as well. But the defense did a phenomenal job of being able to force some takeaways. They did some great job too, knowing certainly with the conditions, being able to get Vandy to have to punt. I mean, you could see the struggle. I mean, I think if anyone paid attention today, they knew that operation time on that long snap back to the punter. At some point, USC was going to get one just because of the conditions today. They did some good things with being able to capitalize off of what the other units did. And I think when we talk about bowl eligibility and having to play your best football right now, Kentucky and Clemson, you need to be able to find that consistency, that momentum, and they were able to do it again today. Joe, what you got? And then I'm going to go over to Mike.
Yeah, we got Dave on the line. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, so from what I've been looking at, just from an analytics point of view, I don't know, for me, I feel like Rattler is really, really cute. He's super handsome. So
I don't know what these colors are on today, man.
Hey, you know what though? You know what? Mike, when you're the quarterback, you're throwing the ball all over the yard. I know this is a joke call more than anything, but
apparently everyone's going
to think the quarterback's going to look at you cute, right?
Everyone's after you, man.
But Mike, going back to that complimentary football comment that I made before that call, is that a real thing that you feel as a quarterback, right? As a quarterback, obviously you're trying to stay in control. You're trying to just focus on what's in front of you. But do you feel some type of momentum shift when the defense is able to get things rolling and it gets the ball back in your hand, sudden change opportunities? Do you feel like that does give the offense a spark? Because I feel like we've seen that from this team, because of that defensive unit.
Yeah. I mean, yes, 100%. And just before we get to that question and answer.
Yep.
He made a great point. For the whole entire season, we have consistently been saying almost every week, even on some of the 3 wins we've had prior to this game, we were just like, man, we just have not found a way where both sides of the ball click and are consistent across the board throughout the entire game. Offense will show up one day, and usually it's been the offense showing up and us questioning the defense, or special teams was bad one day, and we just haven't found it on all 3 sides of the ball where we've been consistent. And What does that go down to? Players figuring out, coaches, who knows what it is about it? The youth, some of our positions, I don't know what the answer is in that aspect, but you can see what happens when our team puts it together. And everyone's saying, okay, yeah, we played Vandy. Vandy put up 28 against Kentucky, 21 against Missouri, 20 against Georgia. Like they in the past have put up numbers against good opponents. And so it's not like we're going in here, and mind you, yes, Vandy was 2-8 going into this game. But in Vandy's eyes, whenever we played Vandy, Vandy knows. I think they recognize they're not a great team. But when they get an opportunity to smell blood against another SEC team, teams they don't usually win against, they're going to come out with everything they have because they see an opportunity. So South Carolina knew they were going to potentially get Vanderbilt's best, regardless of what Vanderbilt's record was. So they needed to connect on all three sides of the ball, and I think they did. But as to your question, 100%. As a QB, when you're going out there and you know that, okay, not all the pressure's on me. I can make a couple of risky throws or do some extra things or miss some throws where I know my defense now is going to step up and get me the ball back. And so,
I want to cut you off real quick because there's some breaking news. Really, really disappointing news that Shane Beamer just announced. Shane Beamer has announced that Juju McDowell has broke his collarbone and he'll be out for the season. I just wanted to cut you off on that one because this is with not knowing what's going to happen with Dakereon Joyner. He's in a walking boot right now. I thought there was a possibility that perhaps DJ Braswell would redshirt this year, but he's at that mark now where he plays one more game. I think he's going to have to play. So I bring that up, Mike, again, because breaking news, if you're just joining us, Shane Beamer has announced that Juju McDowell, who left today's game, he has left the game because of a collarbone injury. And Shane has shared that he will be done for the rest of the season after breaking that collarbone. Big loss for South Carolina. I know, again, there's going to be some people that will be like, well, from a statistical standpoint, I get all that. But, Mike, you've been in situations, you've been part of teams where you have a guy that brings so much, and he has been a tremendous leader. Like, I think stuff like that, I think from a fan standpoint, it gets overlooked sometimes, especially in a year like this, but how important that can be, especially a guy who had probably higher expectations from a statistical standpoint heading into this year. But he hasn't bitched. He hasn't moaned. He's worn that C on his jersey. You lose a guy like this right now, how do you rally together? Knowing that these two games are huge coming up.
They are huge coming up. And I think that's where you need to rely on the culture that Beamer's built within the organization. You lose a guy who, from what I've been told within the organization, and even on game days, you can just see the energy he brings, both in the sidelines and pregame prep, on the field when he's out there. And while he may not has had his most productive year yet as running back, Juju is an energizer bunny for our team, and he's somebody that can help, one, bring our team to a point where they can rally together. And then two, he can also make some explosive plays that are very important for us because as a running, with the running back room, you're going to need more than one guy. I think you see that across the nation with multiple teams having two running backs or more who can benefit or who can play off each other and help the team. And Mario just can't do it all by himself. He's done a great job, but we're heading into a 2 tough week stretch where we're going to need to rely on the run game at some point. And Mario's done a great job, but we're going to have to find somebody that can, one, bring the energy that Juju brings, and also contribute like he can, how he contributed. While he may not have had the year that he is wished for, he has still made some explosive plays for our offense that have been very vital in some important games. And so losing him is, it's tough, but I think Beamer has built a culture where these guys are going to rally around each other. I think we've seen that. We haven't seen any quit in this team, regardless of what the score is, what the record is. And so I think that speaks to Beamer. I think that speaks to the maturity of this team. I think Juju going down is just going to rally this team together even more.
So again, if you're just joining us, Shane Beamer has shared that Juju McDowell has broken his collarbone and will be done for the season. Certainly a big loss for South Carolina for multiple reasons because of the leadership that Juju brings to this team. But when you look at that running back room, not knowing what Dakereon Joyner's status is going to be, and again, the trickle-down effect this will have. I mean, you were probably already in a situation where DJ Braswell was probably going to have to play in both these games coming up, which means that would be 4 and 5 in terms of Kentucky being the 4th game and then Clemson being the 5th game. So burn the redshirt year. I can't see how he maintains a year of eligibility just because of the circumstances. But, we'll worry about that later this week. We'll talk about that on GC Live Talking Tuesdays as we gather more information about what perhaps is the plan for South Carolina moving forward. We'll hear from Shane Beamer. We'll hear from some of the players on Tuesday earlier in the day, and perhaps we'll have a better feel for it. I say all that, though, Mike. Let's talk about Xavier Luedecke, because Xavier had another phenomenal game today. Finished with 120 yards receiving. 120 yards receiving. With those 120 yards, with that near touchdown that he had in the first quarter, that eventually led to an Alex Tuntley receiving touchdown.
Yeah.
Juice Wells has now become the fifth Gamecock to have 1,000 yards or more receiving in a season. Now it's the 6th time it's happened because Sidney Rice did it twice during his career, but he's the 5th Gamecock. And when I mention players like this, Mike, right? Sidney Rice, Pharaoh Cooper, Alshon Jeffrey, Sterling Sharp, and now Xavier Luedecke. You played for this program. You played with some of those guys. How elite is this dude and what you've just seen from him despite some of the struggles this team has faced this season?
Yeah, I mean, that's upper echelon of what South Carolina can produce. You look at some of the receivers we've played in the past, or we've had in the past, even just during my years with Devo, Brian Edwards, Shi Smith, Josh Van, all of these guys, Hayden Hurst, even though he was a tight end, but we had some talent at receiver, and you didn't see those guys hitting 1,000 yards. But look at what some of those guys are doing in the NFL. Like, to see him hit 1,000 yards is such an accomplishment that I don't think people are going to recognize until he's gone. But you look at what he's done with that; it's amazing. That the crowd he's with, and he's also, mind you, still 2 games left, potentially 3. So he and what Alshon was.
And Alshon's record is 1,517. Now, I haven't gone back and done the final calculations quite yet, but he'll pass Sidney Rice most likely next week. There's a huge gap between 1 and 2 right now. And again, I said Sidney Rice is on the list twice. I'm talking about the 2005 year when Sidney had 1,143 yards receiving. But you have 1,143 yards receiving, and then you go up to Alshon, who had over 1,500. But again, I expect that mark to be broken. We had Field Yates on earlier this week, ESPN analyst, talking about Xavier, what he's done in terms of raising his draft stock in ways that maybe people aren't paying close attention to, other than the fact that he's just a freakish athlete, speed, size, all that kind of stuff. But Mike, I bring all that up though because you mentioned this with Dow Loggins before. You lose your top receiver, Juice Wells, right? You lose him. Yeah, he wasn't himself at the beginning of the year. You got him back for a little bit during that Georgia game. You were able to find some type of spark. I think Juice had about 30-something plus yards receiving, if not 40 yards receiving on that opening drive against Georgia before getting hurt on that touchdown. I bring that up because now you have a guy who, heading into this year, Xavier Luedecke, I think he had maybe, just over 400-something yards receiving in his career through the first 4 years, gets the 5th year because of COVID. And again, obviously you need players to be talented enough to do the things that Xavier's doing. But what does this say about Dow Loggins and the trust that he has with X to make him the go-to dude, to use him the way that they continue to use him? And just how does the offensive coordinator dynamic between him, Spencer, and having a receiver like that, how does that work to be able to continue to see the things that we've seen week in and week out?
Yeah, one thing I would love to point out is you brought up his stats for his career, and while not great, they're still good. But the one thing I think Xavier was lacking in his first couple of years was confidence. And when Dow came in, I think Dow was able to recognize the talent that Xavier had, bring out that confidence within him, and say that, hey, we have juice. Because mind you, this confidence wasn't just built when Juice went down. This confidence was building throughout the offseason and trusting him. Hey, you are like our 1A, 1B with Juice. You guys are going to be our assets going forward in this season. And when Juice went down, Xavier stepped immediately up, but I think Xavier was already expecting himself to be such an important and vital role in this offense. And having an offense coordinator who, one, says, we're throwing the ball at you. We're going to find ways to get you open regardless of how you're too much of a freak out there. What he's doing, mind you, he has 1,000 yards against our schedule, which I think going in is one of the top 5 hardest, if not the hardest schedule in the nation, with an offensive line who's beaten up. And everyone knows you're the main target on our offense. And he still has put up those numbers, which is profound because not many guys can do that when defenses are going to target who the best player is and find ways to disrupt that offense. And even with Spencer, that's tough. That's a tough ask, but they found a way to do it. And I attribute that one to Dow. I attribute that to Spencer, and I attribute to Xavier building his confidence, finding a way to just get better. Let's bring it up too. He was training with Debo in the offseason. I think
he mentioned that. And that was.
I wonder how important that was.
And he mentioned that. I know that I did a Mix in a Water Monday segment with former Gamecock defensive lineman, your former teammate Jabari Ellis, and I know this. A lot of the players know this, that Debo has really took pride of reaching out to current Gamecocks and even some former guys to be able to train with them. And he doesn't have the spotlight on him. Not a lot of people know that he's doing those things. Certainly we knew because Xavier said it at Media Day for USC. But that's a really good point, Mike. That's a really good point. I really don't want to spend too much time on this, but I'll answer it. Where is it? From Steve? Because Steve, I think it's one of those things that we can talk more about if we get to that point. And I get it, and you mentioned it being premature a little bit. I mean, look, there's so much that's still left to be done with this season, right? I mean, Spencer goes out there and does, and obviously it's not the same like Tennessee, Clemson last year, but Spencer goes out there, does some things these next 2 games. I mean, shoot, right? Or if he doesn't have good performances these next 2 games, but they're still able to win, how does that impact things? So there'll be a time and place to certainly talk about that, but I don't think you're alone in that thinking. I just think it's premature in the sense that we have to see how things play out these next couple of weeks. We can assume how they'll go, but we'll wait and see. Running the ball today, unless you have something, Joe. You look like you hopped on.
No, nothing on the phones either.
I have something to that though, Mike, real quick. Hold your thought on running the ball. I just want to say something. From a fan now and somebody who watches Gamecock food, I bleed it now. If Spencer decides not to, if we make a bowl, let's hypothetically say, and I hate playing the hypothetical, but if we make a bowl and Spencer decides not to play, I don't think one person across Gamecock Nation can blame him. He's done so much for this program already as is that I don't think anybody, but I think we've also seen Spencer be such a competitor that I wouldn't be shocked if he decides to play and put it all out there for this team one more time.
Yep.
Seeing what he's done, seeing how he's competed, seeing the leadership he's shown, both probably not on the field and in the cameras, and when the cameras are rolling. He's been it all. He's been such a great leader for this program. So I wouldn't be shocked if he goes out. But I think Gamecock Nation wouldn't blame him one bit if he decides not to.
And again, Field Yates, he talked about several Gamecocks, and one of the Gamecocks he talked about was Spencer Rattler, saying how much of a fan he is in everything that he's been able to accomplish this year and some of the little things that people overlook. But I think without talking about it specifically, I'm sure Field would say the same thing, which is, it can't hurt, right? It can't hurt to play in a game like that because there's going to be, unfortunately, people that are going to look at him saying, man, your Oklahoma days, this and that, or whatever the case may be, Netflix, that you keep going out there doing the things that you're doing on top of the fact that once he has a chance to sit down with these scouts and teams and they realize, like, shoot, what the heck is this BS narrative that's been portrayed about this kid because of something stupid from a couple of years ago, from a Netflix thing or, when he was at Oklahoma. I mean, he is, and this is another good point that Field brought up. And Mike, I'm sure you would agree because you mentioned with Debo having an opportunity to learn from someone in the NFL, having the opportunity to learn from Dal Loggins. And I'm not even talking about X's and O's. I'm talking about being a leader, being the CEO of a team in a program. When you're the quarterback, certainly when you're the starting quarterback, but when you're the quarterback, all eyes are on you. How you handle yourself, not just through the good, but through the bad. And unfortunately this year, there's been a lot of bad. And I'm not talking about specifically his play. I'm talking about the team as a whole for one reason or another. And yet his attitude, his demeanor, the way that he conducts himself has not changed. It has not changed. And I'm not just talking about in front of the camera. You talk to people behind the scenes. You talk to people that are in that building every day, that are with Spencer Rattler. They'll tell you the same thing, that he's the same individual day in and day out, despite obviously the challenges that this season has presented. But I do want to talk about the run game real quick, because, and give Mario Anderson credit, second time this year he's eclipsed the 100-yard mark. But take that away, and this isn't a shot at Mario. This is more so just looking at the offense, the lack of consistency up front. You take away that 72-yard run, South Carolina, their run game, again, just when they wanted to run the football, and I said that last week against Jacksonville State, sure, Rattler was picking that secondary apart, and you knew they were going to continue to go back to the passing game. But when USC wanted to run the football last week, when they wanted to, outside of Mario having a 40-yard run on the second play of the game, they struggled to move the football. So if we're trying to nitpick, if we're trying to look at things and be like, man, what can South Carolina do better? Right? Again, we can look at a lot of things that they can do better. That's one thing that stands out to me. Yes, Mario Anderson, he rushed for over 100 yards. It's awesome. It's awesome. But when you needed to run the football, when you needed to, for the most part, again, outside of that run, they weren't able to do that for a second straight week. That scares me a little bit, just because we've seen at times, right, if teams are able to put pressure on the quarterback, and you're not able, as Mike, you know, if you're not able to run the football, you need to be able to get that changeup going. It makes things a hell of a lot easier for defensive linemen and outside linebackers when it comes with bringing the pressure. So that's one thing that stood out to me. I don't know if there's anything else that stood out to you, or if you just want to piggyback off that comment.
Yeah, I mean, I'll piggyback off that. You're right, the run game. But I will say, while we may be a little bit flat outside of those very large runs that inflate our stats, and while they're great, you know, we love them, but I think Dow has recognized that our run game is our weak point. It's hard when you're just rotating offensive alignment in and out every single week, and you can't find continuity with that. So I think you've seen a lot with his RPOs, where he's doing a lot of play action, throwing it to our tight ends in the flats and doing a lot of swing routes like that. I mean, look what Joshua Simon did today. I think most of his catches were kind of on a flat route within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. I don't know if all of them were, but I recognized a lot of them were. And I think that's how Dow is getting around this weaker, inconsistent running game that we've had, is just adding in those shorter, quicker routes, RPO style, getting Spencer rolling out, just to add a mix to it all, because, you know, you recognize where your weak spots are. A good offensive coordinator does, and he finds ways to adjust, and I think that's kind of how he's adjusted.
Joe, we haven't had a real chance to talk to you about this game. You've been these lovely
dealing with
callers.
the phone lines. Been crazy today. A lot of people have some interesting opinions on Spencer Rattler. I'll leave that to them. But
do you have any interesting opinions on this team?
Huh? Yeah.
I said, do you have any interesting opinions about this team?
I've got a couple, and obviously I've got a podcast for that as well, dropping tomorrow. Shout out to those of you who are wearing the merch today. You know who you are. But, I mean, the run game was bad
Joe
today. Yeah. There's merch around in Columbia today.
High demand if you want to advertise. High demand.
I have been sent merch in the wild, but anyways, not getting back to it. I mean, the run game was bad today. And minus that big long run. You're going to need to be better against Kentucky, and certainly need to be better against Clemson. I think you can get away with it a little bit more on Kentucky, because I've said it all year. I think Kentucky's a bunch of fakers. I don't think they're as good as, you know, they've been built up to be. I don't even know if they're good enough to be a 6-win team at this point. But regardless, I think, you know, down the stretch, you're going to need to improve on that running attack. You got away with it against Jacksonville State. You got away with it against Vanderbilt. But you're not going to be able to get away with it against a decent team like Kentucky and an even better team like Clemson. So needs to be better all around. But, I mean, I was very, very impressed with Dowell Loggins' offense today. I mean, when you have defense to back it up and, you know, kind of get off the field quickly and give yourself some momentum going into an offensive possession, I think we're seeing, you know, the fruits of that, right? This offense is, when they do have momentum coming off the heels of a defensive stop, you know, they go and, like, there's a lot more momentum and wind behind their sails even more. So really, really good performance all around, mostly for the offense today, minus, you know, the lack in the run game. But, you know, Spencer Rattler was nails again, continuing his trajectory into an NFL draft pick, whether that be day 1 or day 2. I don't know. I don't think he slips to day 3. But, good game for Spencer and just all around, like I said, really, really good day for Dowell Loggins in this offense.
Now, you mentioned Dowell Loggins. How about a good day for Clayton White? I mean, this guy has got killed. I'm not just talking about on this program after games. He has got killed by a good portion of this fan base for the last couple weeks. And it comes with the territory, right? I'm not trying to say that it's not warranted at times because, again, it comes with the territory, right? Having said all that, I'm looking at you people who have been crapping on this man for the last couple weeks. Why don't you give this guy some credit today? Say, hey, you know what? That's what they needed to do. They did it. Again, I don't care who the heck they're playing. It's an SEC team. They did something that hadn't been done in 4 seasons. 4 seasons. Shut out an SEC team through the first 3 quarters. Last time they did that was against Kentucky. Held them to 6 today. 6. So, again, no one's saying that Vanderbilt is world beaters by any means, right? But at the same time, too, you wanted to see certain things from your defense today, right? If I talked to you on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I saw you out at a bar earlier this week or wherever around town or waiting in line at the grocery store, and I say to you, what do you want to see from the defense this weekend? And you give me X, Y, Z, right? They did exactly that today. So, again, it's okay to smile when good things happen. Don't pivot and say, oh, man, well, it's Vanderbilt. Again, if I asked you earlier this week, give me X, Y, Z, what you're looking for from this defense, and they did exactly that, are you not going to smile? So I give him a lot of credit, certainly, but I give these players a lot of credit because it's not easy. It is not easy. Never mind the fact when your defensive coordinator is getting kicked to the curb by a portion of the fan base and what's being said on social media. It happens at every fan base. I don't want to seem like I'm just specifically talking about South Carolina, but in this case we are, since we cover the Gamecocks. But people are talking about your defense. They're talking about maybe you as an individual. And they were able to ignore the noise, come out here today and do exactly what you needed them to do. Exactly what you needed them to do. It's great, right? It's one game. That doesn't mean anything next week, right? You got to continue that momentum. But at least for today, incredible job from this defense. They played a game that we haven't seen all season long. So, again, hats off to this defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out, I saw the comment. I think it was Jay Diz commented about Lenore Sellers. Shout out to Lenore Sellers being able to come in and obviously make some plays in the tail end of that game.
And he still can play these next 2 games in red shirt because look, and I got to be careful here because there's always going to be that one bubbaloo that's going to hear what I'm going to say here, and they're going to go completely in a different direction. Mike Uva is not saying put Lenore Sellers at running back. Let me say that again. Mike Uva is not saying put Lenore Sellers at running back. I'm not saying that. But with Juju McDowell now done for the season, again, if you're just joining us, Shane Beamer just shared the post-game press conference that Juju broke his collarbone. He'll be done for the season. We don't know the status of Dakereon Joyner quite yet. He's been in a walking boot. But let's just assume that you're not going to have a healthy healthy DK. You don't have Juju out there now. Braswell, that redshirt year might have to get burnt now. That means he plays the next 2 games. I mentioned this before. DK has just been phenomenal in the red zone when it comes to being inside the 5, inside the 10-yard line, and finding the end zone. I would love South Carolina if they feel like they need to change things up to be able to get a spark. And certainly they were down at the 1-2. They've been, a couple big guy touchdowns. I feel like I'm watching the replacements for crying out loud. Back-to-back weeks. Tonka Hemingway.
That's an insult to Boogie and Tonka there, Mike. Come on.
Oh, no, it's the big – I didn't say – John Madden called fat guy touchdowns. I just say big guys.
Okay. Yeah.
Big guys.
No, I thought you meant with the replacements thing that they had to throw Boogie and
No, in the movie The Replacements, John Madden makes the reference. The best thing about a fat guy touchdown is
yeah. But young intern here. Apologies.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta call him big. It's 2023. You don't want to.
Absolutely. It is a big guy touchdown. Fat guy touchdown.
Go watch that movie Bad Dads with Bill Burr. You'll know what I'm talking about on Netflix.
Shut up, Joe.
But anyway, I say that because, it would be great. I mean, at this point, you can throw those extra wrinkles out there. You can use Lenoris a little bit more. I did see some people, and naturally this is going to happen. I don't think Lenore should have played earlier, and he's only going to be here for 3 years. Will you friggin' stop? You haven't seen this guy go up against a friggin' starting defense in the SEC yet. I think he's going to be really good. But some of these people are like already predicting, he's not going to be back his senior year. Will you stop? Will you stop? So, yes, I'm glad that they're in the situation that they're in right now because they're going to maintain his year of redshirt and eligibility. Lenoris going out there doing a couple sneaks, the brotherly shove, whatever the heck you want to call it, 3 or 4 times a game. I don't think that makes South Carolina a bowl-eligible team at this point. I don't think it changes the complexion of the season. But now that you can use him and it's not going to burn the red shirt, I think it's great. Mike, you've played the position. What's just your overall thoughts on Lenoris? What's just your overall thoughts on how USC has managed him this year in terms of this is only being his second game, so he's going to be able to redshirt still? And do you like how USC has gone about it?
Yes, I do like how we've gone about it. We haven't been in a lot of games in a lot of positions where but we haven't been in a lot of games where we can put Lenoris in there and just feel confident that, because a lot of these games we've been in the game or it's been within a manageable area where we can come back. And so I'm fine with how they handled it. The next year, I think in their mind, they think Lenoris is going to be the guy. And so there's no reason to rush him out there and just try and force reps. I think he's going to get a lot of good reps. And, him getting a couple snaps earlier in the season and then tonight, I think was great for him. One, it's just more about just getting on the field and feeling that exposure. There's plenty of QBs across the nation who come in for their first starts as the starting QB and play just fine throughout the year. So that's not really going to be an issue, I think. One question was talking about, have you seen him in practice? And Mike, I know you've been to practices. You can attest to this as well. I think from spring ball to even season, but I've only seen him so far to fall camp. But from spring ball, I was like, this kid has a lot of work to do. I wasn't too sold on him, but something changed from spring ball to fall camp where you saw a lot of maturity, a lot of growth. He stood in the pocket. He moved well in the pocket. His accuracy was even much, much better than it was in the spring. And I don't know what changed. Maybe it was confidence. Confidence is a huge key to a lot of these players. These guys are D1 athletes. There's a reason they're D1 athletes. But when you don't have confidence, it's hard to – so, as a QB, understanding the offense, which probably is not the easiest thing going from high school playbook to a college playbook. And then getting more reps in the field, the coach is giving you the opportunity to, all these factors playing in. And I think we saw him grow, be more mature, operate as an actual QB who could start for this program. And I think I'm hopeful for him going forward and being the guy who can win a lot of games for us. And, another thing that's huge for us is while Spencer is not really what you would consider a dual threat QB, he's made some plays with his legs. Even imagine now what Lenoris can do. We just saw it in Vanderbilt. He's fast. He's strong. We can operate the offense around him and do so many more things with him, along with him being an accurate and good thrower.
Yeah, and they brought this up too. And Big Red, I'm glad you brought this up. I know some people are going to get upset by it, but it's the reality and it's the truth. And we've talked about on GC Live. Big Red says we're talking about sellers, but don't forget that Doty knows how to play the position as well. Dante Reno's coming in also. The options are endless. I've said this before, and again, I know I'm going to get frigging crucified for saying this, especially after Sellers scored today. Not to be a wet blanket, but I truly believe Luke Doty's going to have the opportunity to be the starter first. And that's not saying Mike's saying that he's going to be the week 1 starter, right? Mike's saying this already. I got the whole friggin' lineup already set, right? Everyone's going to get upset with me, right? We got Lenoris at running back. We got Doty there. No, but I think with what USC has right now, they want to continue to improve little things that he needs to get better. Now, there's certain things that because the media is not at practice every day in comparison to what it was like during the summer, that I can't see. So it's more so, you're getting it through a third-party person. The thing that's been relayed to me that he needs to continue to improve on, and I know that you'll get this, Mike, because some people I think will, but I think a lot of people are like, wait a minute, that should be the easiest throw. is just his short passes. He has a cannon for an arm. He can friggin' rifle that thing. He's getting more comfortable with going through his reads. That's something else that he needed to get better at. But it sounds like, again, from talking to people, going even back to the spring, but especially throughout the course of the season, he's getting better and better at that. He's just continuing to work on just those little passes, the swing passes, the stuff that South Carolina and a lot of college teams, for that matter, like to use and incorporate into their offense. So I think the timing of having a chance to be able to play in these 2 games coming up, or 3 games, today and the next 2 will be massive for them. We talk about a bowl game, and certainly they have to win these next 2, or else that's not even a possibility. That's not even on the table. But what some people need to continue to remember, we talk about hypotheticals, right? Whether Rattler does play in the bowl game, if they were to go, right? Again, we'll worry about that if that happens. A guy that would probably benefit the most is going to be multiple position groups that will benefit. Quarterback will be huge. Reno, has been telling me that his plan is to practice with the team, right? Practice with the team. They go to a bowl game. Sellers, I mean, you want to talk about getting your future ready for your program. My goodness. So, again, a lot of great things on the horizon for South Carolina, but they need to keep winning. They need to keep winning to get these young guys ready.
I'll point one thing out too about Doty too. If whether Doty gets the nod next year to be the starter or not, regardless of that fact, Doty's been a great leader for this team, even as a backup. You don't have to be the starter to be a great leader for your organization, for both your defensive players, your special teams, your offense. He's been a guy who brings, from what I know, and I know from how I know him personally, a positive energy every single day, and a spirit that wants these guys to get better, be there for the team, and just make sure everyone is on the same page. And that's the kind of guy you want within your organization. So regardless of whether he starts or not, he's somebody kind of like a De'Carrion Joyner. He's somebody you want within your organization because it makes everyone better regardless of what they do on the field.
I want to add one more thing too, Mike. And I know you were in the building for some of those days. I know you weren't there towards the end of the Will Muschamp era. I know you played for him. I know you also got recruited by Spurrier in those years. But I had a chance to catch up with Marcus Lattimore the other day. He's in town. And Marcus was back in the building on Thursday. I think he was also back in the building on Friday as well. And what he told me is, he's like, Mike, he's like, when I walked in there, he's like, I just felt life. I felt energy. And I'm like, are you just saying that? And he's like, no. He's like, when I was there towards the end of my tenure, meaning when he worked for Muschamp. And again, I've said this before. I love Will. I think Will Muschamp is a phenomenal person. I think there's a lot of things that people don't see about Will. It just didn't work out here. And that's all right. You can, both statements can be true. Having said all that, what Marcus mentioned to me is during that time period when he was working for USC, especially towards the end before he left his role, he said it just felt like death. Like when you were in the building, the energy just seemed flat. And I'm not saying that specifically about the teams that you played on, Mike, in 2018, but towards the end of the Muschamp era. So I say that because for a team that has been really kicked to the curb, right? 2-6, you battle back, you win last week, 3-6. So a 3-6 team. And Marcus goes into those hallways in that ops building. And he's been part of some tremendous teams during that 2010 to 2013 stretch. I think he wasn't here for the 2013, but 3 seasons. And he says the energy was very similar in that building that day in comparison to what it was like back then. I think that's important. I think it's important to point those things out when you mention a player like you said, Luke Doty. We talk about a guy like Juju McDowell. Again, the statistics might not show that these guys are doing tremendous things, but guys like that have been huge.
De'Carrion Joyner as well.
Yeah. Guys like that have been huge with being able to get this team back into a position to continue to fight. It's real easy, Mike. I know you've played for some teams that towards the end of the season, I played for some teams in college where you can just sense guys are like, man, I just can't wait till this is done. Our team stinks. We only have 2-3 games left. We got a couple practices left, and you're just going through, and you can just sense guys are going through the motions. Marcus said that wasn't the case. So I bring those things up because these guys haven't thrown in the towel. I know there's a large portion of this fan base that hasn't thrown in the towel either. There's going to be some people, but that happens at every fan base when you start losing. They're going to continue to fight. They showed that today. They showed that last week. They're going to need to show it again next week, and then we'll worry about Clemson if they're able to get the job done. But I think that, again, what you just mentioned, Mike, is so important to bring up because it shows everything that Marcus was saying on Thursday. Yeah. We're going to get into some more thoughts. We're going to hit some ads because then we're going to wrap things up on the other side. So, Joe, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, as always, talk about our good friends over at Liberty Tax. Tax ID is that uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. Tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for your refund, call in the tax team at Liberty Tax. Fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood. Open 9 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start through the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. Give a call to upload your tax documents, and when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call on your screen right now, 803-462-5576. Once again, on your screen, 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs this season.
And today's program is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond of the Movement Mortgage. You see his sponsorship above us every single GC Live show, whether it be the post-game show, whether it be the afternoon drive, or whether it just be your typical GC Live show with Wes and Chris. When former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth and his wife Shannon, when they were in the process of purchasing a home, who do they call? They called Clint. When Wes Mitchell, our very own Wes Mitchell, and his wife were in the process of buying a home, who do they call? They called Clint. Buying a home right now, it's not easy, especially if you're looking for the lowest rate, but Clint and his team do a tremendous job of being able to help you find the best rate that works for you. Give Clint a call at 803-771-6933. So as I look down on the field right now, as the grounds crew, they've been very busy as of late. Right? 4 straight games to close out the year at home. My goodness. They're doing a great job down there, battling through the elements. And shout out to the troops today, too. I don't know if you guys could see it on TV. Maybe they did a shot. Maybe they did a shot. They came out here probably, 2+ hours in the stands. I think they were doing the 5K beforehand. I mean, my goodness. They've been out here all day. Shout out to the troops for everything they do, not just here today.
Happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day, absolutely. Scar, you brought up the performance today, and I know there's some other things, too, that people are asking. We're going to have a rapid fire to close this thing out in a minute. But you mentioned the performance today at linebacker by Bam. Bam Martin Scott, he's a guy that over the last couple of weeks, he's continued to see more and more playing time. He's a guy that's been here for a while. And another guy that hasn't pouted. He's gone about his business. We've talked about the linebacker room that's been banged up since week 1, right?
Yeah.
Since Mo Kaba went down, and we continue to see more and more guys earning repetitions. And he had a tremendous game today. Scar, you just sent this to me, 13 tackles. He also had that sack in there, which was huge.
Yeah.
Big day for Bam. Yeah, I mean, I guess I can – or Scar. Yeah, I'll have it quick.
Joe, you go ahead.
I'll have it quick. Scar brought it up, and I'm glad he did because Bam just exploded today. Like, this is like one of the first games that we've really seen Bam really come into his own. So I think it's huge game for Bam, and it's exactly what you want to see, right? Because you expected Bam to kind of come along a little bit towards the end of this season with Mo Kaba being healthy. You weren't expecting Bam to do a whole lot and be as involved. And then this year – I mean, as soon as Mo went down, it's like, okay, Bam's got to step up in a big way. Hasn't yet, but finally found his groove today. Very, very big game for Bam. I'm happy for him because he's getting on the right track. He's starting to adjust better, starting to slow – or looks like the game is starting to slow down for him, so happy for the kid.
Yeah, and it's awesome. I always say whenever you have good linebackers back there, it makes the world of difference both in the pass defense and the run defense. Good linebackers can make an elite defense. And I'm not saying we're there now, right now, but when you have a linebacker playing how he played today with 7 solo tackles, 13 total, 1 sack, tackle for loss, those are the kind of stats you look at and you're like, wow, those are what we've been missing all year with consistency every single game because we have that. those, we don't give up as many rush yards. We don't give up as many flat routes to the teams just driving down the field. Like a good linebacker makes a difference. And they bring a lot of energy to the whole team. And so, and they help out with run stops so much because they fill the gaps the D linemen aren't in. So, big shout out to him. That was a huge game. We're going to need him to continue to step up these next 2 weeks, especially with a run heavy offense that Vanderbilt has, or not Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and I would even say Clemson. I think they're run heavy teams. And if our linebacker play can play consistent the way they did today against those two teams, we have a good shot.
If you're looking at the screen, right now, it doesn't look like we're having the pictures pop up. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know.
Apologize for that, folks.
Today,
it's not as fun now to be able to show it. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, there was a funny stat. Poor Alyssa Lane getting thrown under the bus. South Carolina's 0-6 in their last 0-6 in the last 6 games when Alyssa's on the broadcast together with these two, Matt and Taylor. So poor Alyssa. Because she's not even here today, and she's getting strays. Poor Alyssa. All right, let's do a rapid fire. We'll wrap things up. Let everyone get out of there. Get out of here.
Absolutely. Jack, big ass coming from Ireland to see the Gamecocks for the first time next Saturday. What's the best time to arrive at the stadium to savor the atmosphere?
Oh, real quick, I do want to say this before we answer his question. Shout out to the fans that did come out here today.
Oh, yeah.
I know that they'll say that there's 70-something thousand people. There weren't 70,000 people. I mean, some of it has to do with tickets sold, right? Tickets sold, so they're going to count that even if those people don't come out to the game. So I say that because dang Lang. I see R.L. Smith. Dang Lang. Shout out to the fans that came out here today. I would say for the Kentucky game, I think there's going to be more people, especially if the weather is nice. You're going to start having what I like to refer to as the pink hat fans, the fans who don't really care until the team starts winning. When they start losing, they'll go into hibernation. And as soon as they start winning, they'll come out with their pink South Carolina hat. They can't even tell you who's on the team. They can't even tell you the team's colors. They just wear pink Gamecock hat. So you're going to have more pink hats out here next week. You're going to have more people back in the stands. It's going to be a night game, so that will certainly entice people to come out. You're going to have Darude back in here, who that'll be pretty neat.
Sandstorm,
Sandstorm. So I would recommend getting down here. I mean, shoot, I live right near the stadium. I don't want to give the location away, but I remember when I would come to games. Probably if you want to tailgate, at least 4 hours before a game. If you're going to try to tailgate, 3 hours. If you
you got to think too.
What do you think, Mike? Mike, you would know better than me. I mean,
how do I know better?
I feel like this is your world now. I mean, you've been out here. You're sitting in the.
You got to think. Yeah, 4 hours at least. I would say 2 is a safe bet, but 4 hours at least, because you got to think that 2 hours before the game kicks off, they're going to do Gamecock Walk, which that's
you got to see that.
Yeah, you got to see that. If you don't see that, that's kind of just a point. Traffic's even worse then. So you want to be sitting in your spot before 5:30, 100%. But I would say 3 o'clock gets you the full, because one, you get to watch the other 3:30 games. You get to enjoy the weather. You get to enjoy all the fans and the atmosphere. Go watch Gamecock Walk. You get back, have a couple more drinks, and you head in the game, and it's time. 3:30.
It's pretty.
3:30.
I couldn't have said it any better myself, Scar. I think 5:30ish. Be in your spot. Be ready to go. Be ready to wander over to Gamecock Walk, because that's the best part. So
what else we got, Joe?
We got Big Red asks, who was the big time recruit that came to the game today?
Let's see if I can. I'm going to be honest with you. Wes and Chris are the ones that are all over that. Let's see.
Yeah, there were a couple.
See if I can get some of the names here for you real quick.
Mike, you want to pull that up real quick, and then we can go to RLs quickly while you pull that up. Is it normally easier to run block or pass block? Scar, you played quarterback. You give us a rundown on that one.
That's a tough one. I'm trying to remember. I live with an offensive lineman. I always would ask this question too. He was the starting center, Donnell Stanley.
Donnell, shout out to Donnell.
Yeah, dude, Donnie's the man. I think pass block. I could be completely wrong on this one.
They love run blocking. I know that.
I think because you get to engage. I think pass blocking is tough because you have to sit back and take the pressure. Where run blocking, you get to engage.
You can
Now,
just
run
get to
blocking
go
has
hit
a lot.
somebody.
They both have a lot of moving parts. It might be run blocking. Gosh, I didn't ever block. I can tell you that.
We need to ask Garrett next week. RL, ask us when Garrett gets on. He'll probably
I'll
give
trust
us
Travis Edwards. Run block.
Yeah.
Can I real quickly too, talking about injuries today, we and I can't find Wes and Chris's update, Big Red, so I
Gotcha.
apologize. We'll have that for you on Tuesday. We'll do a deeper dive into recruiting for you. I talked about how Trey Knox was going to be available to play today because Shane Beamer on Thursday at Carolina calls. That's exactly what he said. But in post game, in addition to what we talked about with Juju's unfortunate injury with the collarbone, tight end Trey Knox missed last week's game with a hamstring injury and was thought to be back this weekend, but with the rainy weather conditions, the Gamecocks in control of the game, Carolina held him out as more of a precaution. So for those of you just curious, because we didn't talk about Trey Knox, I don't think we've talked about Trey Knox so far on this program, wanted to throw that out there as well. Maybe another question or two will wrap things up. We're at the hour mark. We'll, get on out of there. It looks like the traffic's all gone. I mean, my goodness, I haven't seen things clear out this quickly since, I don't know. I can't even make a good reference. I mean,
Everyone's trying
like
to
a
stay
ghost
dry,
town right
Mike.
now.
Trying to get dry, stay dry. I like this question from Big Red. We're gonna have to cut a couple short. Sorry if we didn't get to your question. We'll be sure to get to it on Tuesday. Tune in Tuesday night. We will definitely get to it. But do big wins, even like this, or even against Vanderbilt, help us in the recruiting / portal side of the team growth?
Mike, I'm going to answer this first, and then you tell me what you think. If it can't hurt, and I'm talking about the era that we live in right now, right? It can't hurt, but let's call a spade a spade. Some of it has to do with NIL. And I said this on Thursday. South Carolina missed out on some dudes last year. I know there's a lot of fans that are upset. Why didn't we get this guy? Why didn't we get that guy? It's not NFL free agency. You don't have this huge cap, right? It's not the exact same. And unfortunately for South Carolina, if you want to compare it that way, they don't have the same type of money when it comes to an NIL standpoint. And we can be naive and just say, well, they're really just going to come here for the money, or they want to be part of something bigger. Every player is different. However, just like I said, it can't hurt when you win. It can't hurt if you have the bag. It can't hurt when you have the NIL money.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm hesitant to say, oh, yeah, absolutely it helps, just because I think it's case to case. And some of it has to do with NIL and things that, unfortunately, you can't control directly as a coach. I think that's frustrating for Shane and some of the guys on staff.
Yeah. And I'll add a couple of statements. I agree with what you said completely on that one, NIL and that whole new world that we're in right now and trying to navigate that. But also, I'll speak directly just to the recruiting. Does it help? Maybe, because I think as a recruit, you want to go somewhere where it's a lively environment every time you step on the field. And I think when you go to a rain game that's cold and it's just terrible conditions, and you have a very filled stadium, not fully packed, not sold out, but a very filled stadium that's loud and rowdy and for a noon game, that can't hurt. I think as a recruit, you're like, okay, against a Vanderbilt team, we're 3-6. A Vanderbilt team that's 2-8. It's raining. It's cold. It's a noon game. All the factors that would lead to not many fans showing up, and the fans show up. I think for a recruit, that's another big selling point, especially for the recruit's parents. They want to be a part. They want their kid to be a part of a program where the fans just are infatuated with the program. And so while yes, NIL is probably one of the bigger factors now that indicates where someone's going to go, and that's a whole different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think this game was important because our fans are so loyal to this program that recruits know when they come here, they're going to get loyal fan base that shows up week in, week out, regardless of the results, and they're going to support the players.
And even though the crowd wasn't, let's just call it for what it is. It wasn't great last week. You had a big-time recruit here, and I know people roll their eyes, and I think a lot of people commented, actually, because I tweeted it. Shane Beamer said on Tuesday that he had a big-time recruit. He couldn't say him by name in his office that Sunday, and he was just blown away by the atmosphere. So if he enjoyed the atmosphere, then just imagine what it's like when this place is packed, when it is rocking the way that we've all seen it rocking. And this isn't going
Saturday.
back. Yeah, and it's not like this hasn't happened in over a decade. We've seen it even during this season, even during a season where it's been rough. We've seen it last year. We've seen it. I wasn't here for the Ace Sanders return that everyone tells me about, the punt return. But one of the louder moments I've seen being here, in recent years at least, was that kickoff return for a touchdown by Xavier Luedecke against Texas A&M to start the game.
Man.
I mean, that place was absolutely rocking. Absolutely rocking. Anything else, JoJo, before we wrap things up?
Nah, I mean, obviously listen to the walkthrough tomorrow. Joined by our very own Mike Yuva. Gonna try to get that episode in before the Pats are in Germany. So check that out.
Guten Tag to all our friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have no idea what the hell. You know what I'm talking about? You're just saying absolutely.
No idea. No, that was another reference that went
Guten Tag
way over.
means hello in Germany. In German.
Guten Tag. I didn't hear the Guten Tag part. It was a little delayed. But either way,
big crooks on phonics kid back in the day.
Huh?
What?
I don't know. Check out the walkthrough tomorrow. Obviously, South Carolina. We'll have all the final thoughts from today's game on the pod tomorrow. Drops at 6. So check that out. And yeah, those are my final thoughts, fellas.
Okay.
Mike, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've played well in November. I think Gamecock fans have knowing what we did last year with Spencer and this team in November. While we didn't have a great October that we were hoping for, that could have springboarded our season into a better overall position as we could have been right now. Regardless where we're at, that was an important game. I think it allowed our offense, allowed everyone within this organization, within that program for the football team to see what happens when every side of the ball clicks. And I hope they preach on that and say, let's continue this going against Kentucky. Let's continue this against Clemson. Finish this year out strong. Give us an opportunity for a bowl game. We're going in against two teams who have shown that they make mistakes throughout the season. And teams have taken advantage of that. While we haven't been the biggest at turnovers, if we can get these sides of the ball to click like they did today, we have a good shot of winning this season out, especially with Spencer as QB. With Spencer as QB, we have an opportunity for any type of game to win. And so I'm happy to see what we did today. I'm glad it was a blowout. I'm glad all sides clicked. I think we carry this forward. We're going to have a rocking night game, hopefully sold out against Kentucky. I think the environment's going to be great. If we come out that with a win, I think Gamecock fans should feel real optimistic about Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, and we also see Andy saying that Scarnecchia game.
All 10,000 fans that stayed. It was loud.
I'm just giving you a hard time, Andy. I'm sure Mike has seen his name spelled 8 different ways.
That's how Spurrier used to call me.
Oh, you know what?
I got that. That. I also got Scarnecchia.
Maybe that's why Andy's saying. Maybe that's why Andy's saying that. Maybe that's why Andy's saying that. Mike, read a book, huh? Me, not you, Mike. Me. My final thoughts. I just think from a defensive standpoint, right? I mean, Mike, you talked about the big picture of it from just the confidence standpoint and being able to try to build some type of momentum moving forward. I just think the confidence of this defense, right? Because I feel like, especially at home this year, and not that anything's going to be taken for granted, but at least at home, USC has just looked different from an offensive standpoint. They've looked different from an offensive standpoint. They put up points. Put up points. They've done it all season long when they're at home. And I get it. It's a smaller sample size in comparison to the bigger body of work because they've played more games on the road, right? Quote me on that one. I mean, they play about 8-7 games at home. Point being is they play more on the road. So I say that because with South Carolina and what they're doing, they need to be able to build as much confidence as you can. And the thing that I look at more than anything is the defensive side. I have confidence in the offense. Even when adversity hits, I feel like Rattler is going to find a way to make things happen. If they can get healthy on the offensive line and they can continue to find a starting 5, which I feel like you can build a lot off of from today, then you should feel good about your chances moving forward from the offensive standpoint. Special teams, they had their best. They had their best performance all season. All season. You should be feeling better about that. Doesn't mean that things are perfect because this is a very young special teams group when you look across all the units. But this defense, man, if this defense can find a way, to continue to force turnovers, right? You had 2 takeaways today. You had 4 last week. That's 6 in a span of 2 games. And again, before last week, you had to go all the way back to September freaking 30th to find your last takeaway, as Alex reminds everybody. Some people are like, wait, Mike actually said that? No, Maron.
It's a running back.
But, no, look, I think this defense needed a game like this today. And this doesn't mean you start smelling, the roses and everything's all sunshine and rainbows. But you needed a game where you can just say, hey, you know what? Our coach has been preaching this. We've been missing some things from an execution standpoint. We know what we're capable of doing. Let's just freaking do it. And they did that today. And they did it. Again, don't care the conditions. Don't care who they're playing. They had to do that. They weren't able to do that against Furman. Furman's a hell of an FCS team. I don't care what people say. Oh, you should be able to beat the crap out of them. They're a hell of an FCS team. I think they're number 2 in the country. But they weren't able to do that. So the people that say, oh, you should do that, they weren't able to do it to them. Yep. They did that to Vandy today. Again, a Vandy team who just last year beat Florida and Kentucky. Well, I appreciate all of you guys. Alex, we appreciate you. Got to stir the pot sometimes. Absolutely. Appreciate everyone that tuned in today. If you missed any of our show, head on over to the Gamecock Central YouTube page where you can watch this show in its entirety. Or if you're a podcast listener, maybe you got a long commute heading back right now and you missed some of the show. Pop this bad boy on the Gamecock Central Podcast Network, and you can listen to this show in its entirety over there as well. He's Intern Joe. He's Michael Scarnecchia. I'm Mike You've appreciate everyone that tuned in tonight. I've only been able to say this 3 other times, but we'll say it again. No need to mix in a water tonight, Columbia. Be safe, and we'll see you tomorrow on the walkthrough.